Okay, so how was your childhood and the expectations placed upon you as a girl by your family and the community, and what did it mean to be a girl in your community in the time you were growing up?
When I was growing up, my parents came from Europe and they both worked, which was unusual for my mother to be working at that time because I was born in 1955. So there was still the dichotomy of the stay at home mom, and a lot of the moms back then were not working outside the home, and my mother was.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, there was additional responsibilities being a female in the family. So when we came home from school, we had certain responsibilities, schoolwork, getting meals ready, chores at home. Um, and also in the community that I grew up in, though, um, you young people got like afternoon jobs and worked. So you babysat for people when you get, on the weekends or sometimes after school. You did yard work for people in the community. And those were all like little part-time paying jobs, which was helpful. And it wasn't gender related at all. I have to, well, no, I can't, it really wasn't because a lot of, like my brother did some babysitting. Um, for families as well as, so it wasn't like gender related, male versus female. Probably the guys tended to do more of the yard work for families, but as a whole, it really wasn't gender related.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, in the where I grew up, the young male and female, when you were in high school, you were looking for those jobs, getting out, wanting to do that kind of thing. Um, and um, and your family encouraged it. At least my family did, because you needed it to better yourself, to further yourself, so you could go on to school. So it was an accepted. Um, they wanted us to do those kinds of things. What else was there? I'm trying to think. Is there any?
Just what did it mean to be a girl in your community in the time that you kind of, that's good. So what kind of paid or unpaid work did you do after schooling?
Well,
The
from college, I mean, from high school, I went right into college, and I only worked. Well, I worked. Had a part-time job. It was full-time hours in the summer, and then at college, I occasionally had part-time work where I would do some typing or whatever for professors, but it wasn't anything steady. And then when I graduated from college, I was a nursing major and I had to sit for my license. And so I was already hired to work at a hospital. Um, so I was already employed when I got out, full time. And they didn't pay me my full nursing salary, my RN salary. I got less pay until my board results um, came and I was actually licensed. And then once that happened, I was paid the full salary. So right from college, I graduated, I was 21, and I moved, I went away to school, moved my junk back home, but then I was working like 3 months later, um, full time at a hospital. So I really never had any part time work at all during that time.
so did you have one experience that stood out when you think about what it was like to be a woman in the workforce, and if you think there's any differences for women in the workforce today?
Well, I think for me also, from the time period where I grew up, women's lib was a real big thing. So women were making a lot of strides then, and moving on, and getting their education and getting out there and getting their profession started. And they weren't thinking of, not I can't say that across the board, but they weren't thinking of, oh, I got to get married by a certain age and have a family. But there were still subgroups of that. I could see where I went to college. There were several girls in my class that felt like at the end of their college experience if they weren't engaged or, you know, getting married. They felt like, it was wrong or they were running out of time, so to speak. But for the most of us, we were focused on getting our education and getting into our careers. And for me, also, I worked in the civilian um, workforce for a short period of time, and then I joined the military and became an Air Force nurse. And I felt like that really opened up a lot more doors just because of the leadership roles that you take within the military and the responsibilities and moving on within the military in the profession that I was in. So that to me was a big turning point as far as women in the workforce or in your profession, moving up the ladder. I think more so than at that time in the civilian population if I had stayed within the hospital system in the civilian world.
And do you want to talk about your life being single, married, and then having children?
And for me, after I was in the military, I did get married and have my husband and we had our career for X amount of time, and then we had a family. And that was another major decision, turning point of starting a family. I guess the big thing a lot just depends on how you want your family unit to be, but it was important for us, at least also for me too, being in the medical profession. And at that time too, I had really started to specialize into pediatrics and dealing with children and nurturing and growing and families and support and continuity. I just felt that I was going to continue to work, but I needed that support system with my husband, and we really worked together as a unit. It's not something that you can just put your family or your children on the back burner and just go and do what you want to do. So it was a lot of coordination, a lot of sometimes some sacrifices for the other partner, and vice versa, giving certain things up. But we made it work. But there's a lot of tug, back and forth with that, and it's not easy, and it's not something that I would ever want to do alone as a single parent if I didn't have to, because of the amount of planning work. Trying to get things done, continuity, that type of
thing. How did you wish to raise your children in terms of gender expectations and the kind of male or female you wished your children to
be? I have two girls, and my feeling with them and the way we've raised them is that they can do anything that they put their mind to. It's hard work and getting it done, and it doesn't matter if they feel like they want to go whatever career path that they're able to do. They have the skills to do that as long as they want to make the commitment and do the work that's involved, and that's the key. So. Not making excuses, but if they really want to go whatever career field, the door's open for them, and there really shouldn't be any obstacles in their way. When it comes to their, family life and how they pursue that, the big thing I just try to reinforce with them, like we did with ours, is to have that stability, to respect life. Caring for your kids, being there for them, nurturing them, not thinking of them like, one day you're there for them, the next day you're not. It's not like you have how some people, I hate to use the analogy, but some people, I see this in our lifestyle, where some people think children, it's like having a pet, they want to have a child or a pet one day, but the next day they don't want to be bothered. Mm-hmm. And it's not like that. It's a 24/7 type of thing. So that's, the big thing we drill home within our family unit, our family in general.
Did you raise your girls differently than you were raised?
I don't think so. I have to say, My father was probably a little bit more traditional from his Irish background, um, wanting my mom to stay at home, but my mother, coming from her background and the time frame she was growing up during the war in Europe, she felt the need to work because they lost so much during the war, and so um, she was probably a little bit more progressive in working outside the home and trying to further things along. But overall, they worked together and making it work, and that's how I've done it with my lifestyle with my husband. So I really don't think in general that, yeah.
What major historical events or movements in American social and political life had an impact on your life?
Well, I think the women's movement that I grew up in, that whole '60s and '70s movement, um, it had some impact in the fact that I felt like I can go on and have a profession, but on, excuse me, but on the same token, I felt like um, it was a little narcissistic in general with some of the things that went on, and not just with the women's movement, but with the whole me thing and the drug scene, and I can do what I want to do. And I just thought that was I could see that, even though I was in the younger stage of that time period, I just felt like some of it was a little bit selfish. And that I think helped me in being more stable in working with my decisions of going to school and having a family, of not just saying it's all about me, but working together, um, and considering everyone within the family. Um, so that the whole '60s movement, that whole hippie Vietnam women's thing, do whatever you want to do kind of thing, that really did affect me because I really thought some of that was disrespectful and a little narcissistic, and that really did bother me, and it turned me off to quite a bit of that. Um, what else? I guess that's probably the big thing for me. Yeah.
Well, what do you think about the lives of younger women today, and in what ways do you think they're similar or different from your own times?
What I see as a nurse, and I also work at a small college health clinic in Maryland, and I see as women in general within the media today that is upsetting to me, is I see women being disrespected more today than they were back when I grew up. And I think women need to wake up and respect themselves and not put themselves first, but to say when people are disrespecting them, to say, we're not going that way. And then I'm a human being, and um, and to look at the way we present ourselves in our dress and how we talk, because you need to command that respect. And I feel today the media and activities that are on is just putting women down more today than I've ever seen in my lifetime. And women have got to wake up because they have come a long way from the 50s and the 60s, but now I feel like we're kind of stepping back just because of some of the unprofessional, disrespectful ways that's going on within our social activities that are out there today.
What were your hopes and dreams as a younger woman, and how were they fulfilled, or have they changed over time?
Well, when I was a younger woman looking back, I mean, I just wanted to be independent. I wanted to be able to, get my education, get a profession where I was able to stand on my own 2 feet. And I feel like I did that. I don't know, if I think, like I'm a nurse practitioner, you know, maybe if I had a little bit more courage or a little bit more, um, I don't know, upspa or whatever you want to say, you know, would I gone on to medical school back then? You know, was I held back just because it was still a little bit more of a male profession? It's in hindsight, it's you know, it's hard to say, but I feel like I've accomplished a lot. Um, so yeah, I mean, in hindsight, you can always say, yeah, would I have done some things differently? Yeah, I probably would have, but it worked. I mean, I was able to be independent and go out and work. So I feel like you know, you're always going to want to change certain things in everyone's life is always going to say, oh, I would have done this a little differently. And that's part of, you know, growing and you know, maturing. So, um, so that, you know, I guess that's about all I can really say on that.
What do you think about growing old in our society, and how does aging have an impact on you because you're
Um, I guess I mean, the big thing with growing older in our society now is that people are living longer, and because people are living longer, um, you're looking at, you know, quality of life issues, and with this whole dementia, Alzheimer's. So I think that's the big thing that I think a lot of people in their 50s and 60s are starting to think about, as there's more of us and people are living longer, is, you know, how is that, um, you know, going to affect you and how you're going to deal with that. And that's male and female. Probably with females, I think, though, in general, depending on what kind of life, you know, you did live before, how financially you're stable, what are your support systems because of that. Because sometimes in my time period, a lot of males had the pension, and when the male dies, you know, what was set up for the female. So those kind of issues can affect some females in my generation, not quite as much as before. But and then I guess the other thing is you age. You know, you think of safety in our society, because a lot of people will take advantage of elderly people, and will they take advantage of it more so with a female versus a male? I don't know. I don't really see that right now, but that's the other, you know, the concern as you get older, like in your 70s, 80s, and 90s, if you're still around. So.
And what is it about your life that gives you the greatest peace or satisfaction? And what would be the one most important insight or piece of advice you might give to younger people, particularly from your experiences as a woman?
Well, the greatest satisfaction, I think, is being honest and working hard and having respect. And for me, it's been my family, you know, being there for them and teaching them those values. But yeah, being honest and hardworking and having respect, and having that family unit. And also having your faith, that comes along with the honesty and the nurturing and having that core belief there to turn to, because there are good days and there's bad days. And we're human, we're all going to make mistakes, it's not going to be an easy road, and you're going to need that core belief in your family to get you through those times. And if you don't have that, that's where you see the splintering, the dysfunctional that goes on. So whenever you look at anybody, even when they seem to always be happy, or you think, gosh, you know, they always think things are going well. Everyone at some point in their life is going to have a down period. They're going to have some type of major problem that will happen to them, an illness, a family member dying, whatever. And if you don't have some type of core belief, religion, for me, God, prayer, in your family, you're not going to get through those times, and that's invaluable. That's what you're going to need.